Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is John Viglotti, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you joined us for Day 2 of our Battery and Precious Metals Conference. We'll kick off today with a live presentation from Jindalee Resources. And before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you're interested in meeting with Jindalee, please click on the Schedule Meetings tab found in the platform navigation bar. You'll be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Lindsay Dudfield. He's the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Jindalee Resources, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol JNDAF and on the ASX under the symbol JRL. Welcome back, Lindsay.
Yes, thanks, John. Thanks very much to OTC for the opportunity to present Jindalee to you. As you mentioned, we presented last year, and there's been a lot of significant developments with the company since then. So it's great to have the opportunity to share those with your investors. So the title slide here is Jindalee's lead project, the McDermitt Lithium project. It's located in the southeastern corner of Oregon on the Nevada border. In the middle of the slide, you can see a low range of hills, very light coloured. That's the lithium mineralisation. This is a sediment-hosted lithium deposit, so an emerging class of lithium deposit, very, very large tonnage, relatively low grade. So they're like the porphyry coppers of the lithium world. Other salient features, so you can see the mineralisation sticks out of the ground. Other salient features are to the end on the left-hand side, looking at the slide of that low range of hills, the mineralisation. You can see, maybe if you squint, some wast dumps, and they're from an old mercury mine that was active until basically the mid 1940s. Sits just outside Jindalee's tenure, and in the foreground there's sagebrush, and the ranchers run their cattle through the sagebrush in the spring. So the area's had a long history of both mining and the ranching. So it's certainly not pristine wilderness. It's quite degraded, country, and as I said, with a very high metal endowment, but particularly lithium. So I'll move on to the obligatory disclaimer, and then just a very quick summary of the company to introduce the presentation. So look, as I said, Jindalee's lead asset is the McDermitt Lithium project. It is a genuine Tier 1 world-class lithium deposit, and Jindalee owns it 100%. It is the largest lithium deposit in the United States, with indicated and inferred resource totaling 21.5 million tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent. The project has excellent metallurgy, and because of its scale and also because of its geometry, it's amenable to a very low-cost bulk mining exercise, and also because of its scale, it does have the potential to materially change or impact on the US lithium market. It's certainly a strategically important lithium asset for the United States. Jindalee itself, we've been listed almost 21 years now. We listed in July 2002. We've got a history of creating value for our shareholders, creating wealth for our shareholders, and that's certainly a point to note, is that management has a lot of skin in the game. We basically have about 30% of the company, so we think like shareholders rather than employees, and that's very important for shareholder returns. And we're so confident in that our McDermitt project is a transforming project for the company that we have, earlier this year, we spun out all of our Australian assets, put them into a separate company called Dynamic Metals, which is listed separately on the ASX. And so that leaves Jindalee as a pure play US lithium company focused on McDermitt. Just the corporate snapshot. We've 57.5 or just under million shares on issue, so very, very tight capital structure for a company that's been listed as long as we have. Share price at the close of business last week, $2.25 Aussie, and that gave us a market cap of around 130 million Aussie after deducting cash and investments that the company holds. An enterprise value of around 122.5 million Aussie, which is about 82 million US dollars, which is very, very cheap for the size of the McDermitt asset. As I said, management have around 30% of the issued capital. I hold about 26% of the company. Never sold a share since we listed. All I've ever done is buy. I'm a huge believer in the company, and I'm basically putting the money where my mouth is. And the rest of our top 20, they own 80% of the issue capital. So it's very tightly held and a very loyal long-term shareholder base. The board and senior management, our chairman, Justin Manalini, is a lawyer with merchant banking experience, most recently at Macquarie. I'm a geologist. My if you like, my strengths are project generation. Recently, in the last 6 months, we've added 2 new directors to the board. So Darren Waits and Paul Brown, both with lithium experience, operational lithium experience. Darren with Neo Metals and Paul with Mineral Resources, who are a spodumene or pegmatite hard rock lithium producer in Western Australia. US operations, our US manager is Brett White, who's a Brett Marsh, who's a geologist, and Carly Terzanidis recently joined us as company secretary at the start of the year. So a small but very sort of hardworking team here, a core team. So as I said, we spun out all of our Australian assets as Dynamic Metals. Dynamic listed on the 16th of January, and that leaves and Jindalee holds 25% of the issued capital of Dynamic, but that leaves Jindalee as a pure play US lithium company, as I said, focused on the giant McDermitt project on the Oregon-Nevada border. So I'll briefly touch on this. I'm sure most of the investors out there are very familiar with the supply-demand situation for lithium, and obviously with global electrification, increasing demand for lithium, which has been driving the price. So on the left is a sort of a slide that demonstrates this comes from Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, demonstrates the almost exponential forecast growth for lithium, primarily for lithium-ion batteries for EVs. And on the right-hand side, you can see the sharp run-up in the lithium price mid or early 2021, and retracement since then in the last few months. Currently trading, the spot lithium carbonate price on fast markets is around just under $30,000 a tonne, having peaked at $90,000 a tonne. So that has created opportunity for and some pretty attractive valuations in lithium companies, and Jindalee is no exception to that. We think we were already undervalued and pretty cheap prior to the retracement in the lithium price, and we've just become even cheaper. So certainly something to have a look at. The latest estimate by the IEA is that there'll be a 35% increase in EVs sold this calendar year compared to last year, and that obviously is driving demand for lithium-ion batteries and therefore lithium. And just sort of reinforced here again, but one thing I thought was pretty interesting was a graph on the right hand side there that was put out by Goldman Sachs a couple of weeks ago, and that shows, and you know, that's based on US Department of Transportation figures, but that shows that the US Department of Transportation expect that new car sales by 2035 will be entirely EVs, and that internal combustion engines, you know, will basically go the way of the dinosaur. I don't think that's quite right, but certainly it does indicate the momentum that there is currently behind EVs. Let's just advance this. Let's have a look here. Okay. Here we go. So this shows battery factories. Oops, sorry, I've just gone too far. It's a little bit of a lag here. I do apologise. Okay, so battery factories. Now it's about a bit over 12 months old, the slide, but it's still very salient. Battery factories currently in operation in the United States, under construction or planned. And you can see there's a lot of them. Benchmark Mineral Intelligence expect that the demand for lithium to satisfy all of these battery factories by 2031 will be approximately 600,000 tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent. You can see that in the box in the bottom left. The US currently produces around 5,000 tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent, and Albemarle are talking about doubling the production from the only operation currently in the United States, which is the Silver Peak operation in Nevada, doubling production to 10,000 tonnes. But the obvious question is, where's the rest of the lithium going to come from? And that's where we're very confident that large low-grade deposits like Jindalee's McDermitt deposit and like Lithium Americas Thacker Pass project will have a role to play in helping meet some of that forecast demand. And obviously we're seeing bipartisan support for critical minerals projects in the United States as the United States seeks to become as self-sufficient in critical minerals as it can be. And obviously that really started rolling probably about 12 months ago, just over 12 months ago, and has continued. Probably the most important announcement for us, which has started to flow through into the lithium sector, has been the Inflation Reduction Act becoming law. And the third bullet point you can see there, the amount of funding that is available from the Department of Energy to help stimulate the development of domestic critical minerals projects in the United States is quite staggering. And some of that money is now starting to flow, or at least be pledged, if you like, to critical minerals projects. And in the lithium space, for example, middle of January, we saw the DOE announce a $700 million conditional loan to the Rhyolite Ridge project, which basically is in fact, actually, this is a typo here. I do apologise. That has been recent since the slide was written. This has been updated to 3.4 million tonnes. So the Rhyolite Ridge project currently has about 3.4 million tonnes of lithium carbonate. So it's about, let's say, 1/6 the size of the McDermitt resource currently. And then late in February, Lithium Americas, who own the Thacker Pass deposit just to our south, announced the receipt of a letter of substantial completion from the Department of Energy, and Lithium Americas have basically stated that with existing cash, which includes a recent placement to General Motors in return for offtake from Thacker Pass, and with this assuming this funding comes through from the DOE, they expect that will cover around 75% of the capital requirements for Thacker Pass. So certainly they're very large projects, they're very expensive, but the US government is basically stepping up to make sure these projects happen. So let's move to the McDermitt project itself. So it sits in an old extinct volcanic crater called the McDermitt caldera. And as I mentioned, there's very high metal endowment within this caldera, not only obviously lithium deposits, but also I mentioned mercury mines, and also there's a bit of uranium in the northeastern part of the caldera, and also some gold deposits scattered around the margins as well. But importantly, it's a really got huge lithium endowment, and you're currently in this slide on the right looking at the two largest lithium deposits in the United States. Thacker Pass at the southern end of the caldera, and the caldera margin shown there in yellow, dotted line. And at the northern end of the caldera, we've got Jindalee's McDermitt project. As I said, Jindalee owns this 100%. We identified it in early 2018. We took samples. It was open ground. We then staked claims over it, and those claims were granted in June 2018, and we commenced drilling in the second half of 2018. Proof of concept drilling, and basically that drilling proved that there were substantial thicknesses of lithium mineralisation at the project, and we've continued to drill every year, and we now have drilled a total of 62 holes, and that basically enabled us at the end of February to announce an updated resource of basically 3 billion tonnes at 1,340 ppm lithium for contained lithium carbonate equivalent of 21.5 million tonnes. As I said, making it the largest lithium deposit in the United States. So look, as I said, it's very strategically important. It's going to be a very long life source of lithium for the United States as it tries to achieve its electrification and carbon reduction goals. So it's certainly it's got a pretty promising future ahead of it. So middle of last year, the resource at McDermitt stood at 13.3 million tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent, which at the time made it the second largest lithium deposit in the country. We then embarked in sort of the second half of last year on a drilling program. We drilled 21 holes, roughly half diamond holes and half RC holes, and you can see photos of the respective drill rigs in the bottom left there. On the right hand side, you can see the blue holes that are shown here, mainly out on the western side, and also twinning some of the RC holes in the centre of the resource. The diamond holes and the green holes down here in the southwest and out on the eastern side of the project. They're the RC holes we drilled last year, and we got phenomenal intercepts. It was a really successful program. I should point out that the yellow part of the resource is the indicated resource, and the red part is the inferred. Okay, so yes, we got just fantastic drill results on the eastern side of the project. The holes that we drilled out there, RC holes, we got really good widths of lithium mineralisation from surface, which is where you want it if you've got an open pit operation proposed. And on the western side of the deposit, out on its margins here, we got 180 metres of continuous mineralisation, 130 odd metres of continuous mineralisation, huge thicknesses, and they clearly pointed to a significant uplift in the resource when all of the data was compiled, and basically that's what happened. If we move to the next slide here, the amount of contained lithium increased from 13.3 to 21.5 million tonnes. So that was a 62% increase in the total size of the resource. But importantly for us, because we report under ASX, and ASX has got very strict reporting requirements when it comes to reporting indicated versus inferred resources. Now just over half of the resources is in the indicated category, and it was around a third of the resource just over last year. So that was a major development for us as well. Very positive. But there's no point having the largest lithium deposit in the United States if you can't get the lithium out profitably. So metallurgical test work, has been basically ongoing since we first acquired the project back the claims are granted in June 2018. So there's two main methods of extracting lithium from sediment-hosted deposits. Acid leaching using either sulfuric acid or hydrochloric, and that's what's proposed at the Thacker Pass project to our south. And also there's another a lithium boron project, Rhyolite Ridge. I mentioned that they got a $700 million conditional grant from the Department of Energy for that project. So they're both of those projects proposing using sulfuric acid to leach the lithium out of the sediments. And the other method, which is proposed by Ganfeng for the Sonora project, which is in Mexico, is alkali salt or sulfation roasting. And so we've trialled both of them. We've had excellent results. We've demonstrated we can beneficiate our ore, which is a real game changer. And we get very high lithium extraction rates, 97% using sulfuric acid at moderate temperature, that's around 70 degrees Celsius, and atmospheric pressure. And also we're also able to produce a lithium phosphate precursor product using alkali salt roasting. So what we did at the end of last year, we engaged Fluor, a major US lithium engineering company with strong lithium experience, to review all of the metallurgical test work that we've done and recommend the best pathway forward. And so we were very happy to announce towards the end of March that Fluor recommended a combination of beneficiating the ore followed by acid leaching using sulfuric acid as the optimum or preferred flow sheet for the project. And they actually recommended we go straight to a pre-feasibility study, a PFS, and also undertake more detailed test work to further refine this project. So we're very encouraged by the review that Fluor completed on the project, because it's given us basically a processing route that looks like it's going to work for us. And as I said, this is almost identical to the flow sheet that's proposed for the Thacker Pass project to our south, which is currently under construction. So another important development was basically in middle of February. We announced a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with POSCO Holdings, and the POSCO Holdings are a leading Korean metal producer, and including lithium. They're a lithium producer, and importantly, they are a supplier of cathode active materials, or CAM, to General Motors, and so they are obviously an acceptable partner for Jindalee, and so they're currently testing a very large sample of ore from McDermitt. It's going to cost them around 2 million Aussie to test that. The test work's expected to take up to 6 months, and at the end of that, we'll sit down with POSCO and have a chat about next steps and their potential involvement in the project, and we'll see where it goes from there. So very strategically important potential, and I say potential, partner for the project. And they just want to be as big in battery materials, the last point down there, by 2030 as they currently are in steel. They're pretty big on steel. So. And we're in the United States. Basically, ESG is very important, as it is anywhere in the world. Probably the most important thing to note there is that last year we conducted extensive environmental and also cultural baseline studies at McDermitt, and very happy to report that there were no red flags raised as a result of that work. So that gives us, a high level of confidence that this project will be developed. There aren't any critically endangered species or burial sites or anything like that are likely to hold up the project. So if there's one slide that you should be etched in your memory after this presentation, it's this one. So this shows Jindalee's McDermitt project compared to other North American sediment-hosted lithium deposits. So our peers, if you like. So on the x-axis, we've got the tons. Y-axis, the x-axis is the grade, lithium grade. And the size of the bubble indicates the contained lithium carbonate equivalent. So you can see here that obviously at 21.5 million tonnes of lithium carbonate, McDermitt stands head and shoulders above all the other deposits. And down here at 3.4 million tonnes, for example, is the Rhyolite Ridge deposit, which is the one I mentioned just recently, was awarded a $700 million conditional grant from the Department of Energy. The other part of this project that's very salient is that comparing the market caps of the different companies. Now, we've tried to be as fair as possible and use as cut-off grade as close to 1,000 ppm as possible. You know, and we've been able to achieve that for the most part. The other thing is they're not quite comparing apples with apples because, for example, Lithium Americas, who own the Thacker Pass deposit, have also owned half of an emerging brine project in joint venture with Ganfeng in Argentina. In fact, that's going into production. So you've got to discount from their market cap the value of perceived value of their estimated value of their brine project in Argentina. But you can see there that even if you make those adjustments, Jindalee is extremely undervalued compared to our peers, and I just put some numbers together just before the presentation came on. Jindalee is currently valued at about, this is in Australian dollars, $6 a tonne, lithium carbonate in resource. The explorers on that chart, so that's Clayton Valley project, Tonopah project, Big Sandy project, together they've got an average valuation of around $185 a tonne for lithium carbonate in resource in their sediment-hosted deposits. And if we were valued at a similar, sort of rate, if you like, we would have a share price of around almost $70. Well, I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't think we're going to be valued at $70, but it does indicate that there's a huge discrepancy in the valuation of Jindalee relative to our peers. So what's coming up? We've already announced the major resource update. The flow sheet optimization is ongoing, the exploration plan of operations, which will allow us to do a lot more ground disturbing activity, a lot more drilling, a lot of bulk sampling, etc. for metallurgy. That's been lodged, and we should have an announcement on that. It's been well received by the BLM. Detailed studies, these are metallurgical studies feeding into probably a PFS, basically are underway now. All going well, we'll have drilling going on in the September quarter, either a modest program, based on existing cleared drill sites, or if our EPO is approved by then it'll be a much larger program. We're building and strengthening the team and the board, as you've seen, both in the US and obviously in Australia. We've announced the MOU with POSCO, and we're also talking to other parties. So it's been a very, very sort of active, basically 3 months, really. Start to the year. It's been very, very encouraging. So here's my contact details. If you want to send us an email and you want further information, and I'll just have a look at some of the questions that have come in here in the last minute or so that I've got. So basically, let's have a look at this. The first one that came in was any US government initiative, IRA participation. Yes, look, we will need to de-risk the project further to qualify for example, the sort of loans that have been advanced or conditional loans advanced to Rhyolite Ridge. But we're very confident, given the scale and importance of the project, that we will qualify. But we need to do more work to de-risk the project. And having a PFS out at the end of the year should make a big difference. Are there any other minerals there that could affect a recovery? No, not. There's no mercury within our deposit. There's no uranium within our deposit. So we don't think there's any showstoppers from a metallurgical point of view as well. Another question, so we got resource estimates. Yes, for McDermitt, we don't have a resource estimate for our Clayton Valley project. That's much earlier stage. Why do we think we're undervalued? We think that basically we're an Australian listed company with a major project in the United States, and investors are parochial. We think that we need to increase US investor participation in the company, and hence telling the story here this evening or this morning your time. And also, look, we've been pretty low profile. We haven't promoted heavily. We've basically just gone on and done the work, and that's obviously, we've got the results, and now it's time to start sharing them. What else have we got here? Capital position. Look, we had $2.8 million Australian at the end of the March quarter. We've added a little bit of cash to that in fact, this week through some inflows, but we will very likely look to top up our working capital, before 30 June, which is the end of the Australian tax year. Are we actively pursuing Clayton North? Look, at the moment, the name of the game, the big prize is McDermitt, and that's where our focus is, and that's where it should be. So, look, thanks very much. And if you've got any further questions, as I said, please don't hesitate to email me, inquiry@jindalee.net, and I'm very happy to come back to you with responses. So, look, thank you very much for your participation. Thanks for your interest, and thank you to OTC.